Are the Cowboys closer to a rebuild or a championship? Because if you ask me, they're a lot closer to hitting the reset button, getting a new quarterback, getting a new head coach, getting a new GM. Because that situation in Dallas is probably the most dysfunctional stuff that we've seen in sports in the last 25 years. Since we've been born, the Dallas Cowboys have not been that great.
No,
Everybody holds on to
no.
this pride of what they did in the 90s when they had Michael Irving, Troy Aikman, Emmitt
How
Smith.
sad. How sad.
These
I listen,
guys,
I don't have an issue with the Cowboys. I really don't. But
no.
at the same time I hate them because every year I'm given these reasons to believe that they're going to be a championship contender. Like this is the year they win the NFC. This is the year they make it to the Super Bowl. This is the year that they finally win it all after an X amount of years. Every single season, that is what I am being fed. That is what I'm being told. And every single
Yep.
year, they are a major letdown. And this year isn't looking any different than the
It's
previous
looking
last
worse.
few years. It's actually looking worse. There's a lot of bad things happening in football right now. The Browns are a mess. That organization is terrible. The Giants, God knows what's happening with that organization. Jacksonville is in the shitter. It's a lot of bad storylines in football right now, but the Dallas Cowboys is certainly up there with all this. You have Jerry Jones making comments that are just so outlandish and just
You
making things
threaten a man's
worse.
job.
You threaten another man's job, a reporter that's doing his job asking journalistic questions. You have a quarterback who you just, Dak, no disrespect, that you just overpaid that you felt like you had to do because you just gave CeeDee Lamb a contract. Now it's like we got to keep the quarterback around when realistically that you kind of put yourself in the corner. I don't know if you had to give Dak all that money, but they did anyways. But that's in the past.
It did
But
not.
now, right in the present, they're stuck. Dak, CeeDee, you had to give CeeDee that money. That's fine. He's one of the best receivers in football. That makes sense. But the commitment and also just like injuries as well. I mean, Micah Parsons missing time when he's never really missed time in his career. Like
Marcus
that's
Lawrence is
obviously a
good.
tough blow. Defense taking a blow. So there's factors.
Yeah,
But to answer your question, are
absolutely.
they close to a rebuild or a championship? I'm not. I don't know how close they are to a rebuild, Jerry. But I'll tell you what. I don't think they're close to a championship.
They're on
So
different sides of the
I'll probably say rebuild.
It's very much where I'm looking at them as, in a situation as to where, like you said, they dug themselves in a hole because they didn't have to give Dak that money. But since they
Right.
decided to, why did they wait until just before the season kicked off, basically, to pay both their receiver and their quarterback? And they didn't even make any other major moves. It's not like they added a big name free agent, which is why they waited. Like they could have
Jerry
got
Jones
Derrick
was
Henry,
saying
right?
he said he didn't have money. They didn't have money to do it. So
And they paid these two guys monster deals. Again, I agree with CD being signed. He's a young receiver. It makes sense to have a building block in place, but you could have just rolled this year out because this is Mike McCarthy's contract year as well. Could have had
yep.
him in place, could have had Dak Prescott in place, see what happens. But after this year, get ready to try to get a new QB, get ready to retool that O line because guess what? The Dallas Cowboys are last in the league in terms of rushing yards per game. Guess what? We
Shocker.
talked about Michael Parsons being hurt. DeMarcus Lawrence has been too, unfortunately. He's on IR. But this defense is like bottom eight teams in terms of rushing yards allowed, in terms of total yards allowed, and in terms of points allowed.
Which
They
is
are
just so
atrocious
different.
on both sides of the ball.
It's
They
like that's just not what their Cowboys are used to. We're meant to, we're used to them having one of the best offensive lines in football, one of the better defenses
yeah,
in football, and now it's like two of them. They're the two worst in those categories. It's insane.
it's Swiss cheese. I'm tired of having to talk about the Cowboys or seeing people have to talk about the Cowboys because this is America's team. But if America's team
All
is
right.
getting blown out on a Sunday by the Detroit Lions, love the Lions. I think they could come out the NFC. They're great. But they're running plays to their offensive linemen, like 3 plays, a hook and ladder.
They're messing. They're fucking with them. They're
It's
just fucking with them at that
This
point.
is the ultimate sign of disrespect. This is the ultimate sign of we need to rebuild. And I don't know what it is with Jerry Jones, but when you really try to overstep on your boundaries, I get you're the owner, but to think that you're good enough to be a GM when all these other owners hired people to do this job, because being an owner is one thing. Marketability, Jerry Jones knocks that shit out the park.
Mm-hmm.
Look at us. We're talking about him right now. Like
He's doing his
he's doing great. And
doing
you're a
his
great
job.
owner, I think. In terms of marketability and actually getting merch sales up, I'm sure he's doing phenomenal there. But in terms of team building, people literally start from the bottom to be a scout. work their way up to assistant GM, and then they're a
Right.
GM, and they're making moves for their teams and whatnot. You haven't done a great job with that over these last few years. I get he's been able to draft Micah Parsons. He got Dak Prescott late, which is a rare hit. Ezekiel Elliott wasn't a bad hit either when he was still good those first 2 or 3 seasons.
Right.
But sure, you put together solid rosters, which is why you won 3 straight seasons of having 12-plus wins. I get it. But not being able to actually be sustainable, have a sustainable product for the rest of this decade is concerning. I'm looking at
Absolutely.
Dak Prescott right now like you shouldn't be there. Like you shouldn't have extended this deal because not only, you're getting your money. Shout out to you. That's great. But in terms of relevancy, you're not going to matter. Dak's not a top 10 quarterback right now.
No, absolutely not. Not even close to being a top 10 quarterback. Yeah, I just think the Cowboys put themselves in a corner with one bad decision after the next. And it's just like your owner, Jerry Jones, just making it worse with these comments and stuff. You know, he's made comments about players like him and CD Lamb had back and forth and they were going through contract negotiations. And, you know, Dak Prescott wasn't thrilled with how things were being handled at the time of his extension talks and everything. So it just seems like there's a lot of issues going on from the talent on the field to how things are being handled behind the scenes to how players are feeling in the locker room. It's just a big, you know, disconnect, I guess. And I think the team goes as far as Jerry Jones takes them, as weird as it sounds, because he's not a player. But like with that being said, I don't think they're going to go far at all because he's really holding this team back. So
what's the expectation? Let's predict what are the Cowboys doing this year? What's the
well right now, I mean they're 3-3. They're behind the Eagles and the Commanders in the NFC East. Realistically, I think right now those two teams are better than Dallas 100%. They might not even make the playoffs this year. I mean, plenty of season left, but unless they turn things around, they're not stuff in the playoffs to begin with. Never mind talking about going for a championship.
Honestly, I'll throw in this nugget for you. Honestly, too, like they have the 20th hardest schedule remaining, or something like that, or the 13th. Sorry, it's like the 13th toughest schedule remaining, or something like that. So I think they play the Vikings coming up soon. I think they're playing Chicago, which the NFC North has all 4 of their teams are above 500, and they're like 4-2 with the Vikings being 5-1. I think the Lions are 5-1 or 5-0. Sorry for the Vikings, and the Lions are 5-1. So it's not a cakewalk of a schedule. I think they play the Texans as well, which is obviously another good football team. So
right,
realistically, I could see this team finishing like 7-10. I could see them falling out the postseason. Their best case scenario is trying to be 9-8 and hoping that the rest of the division is so bad, or the rest of the other wild card spots are so bad that you might be able to crack in. But even if they do, they go home in the first round every year anyway. And that's exactly what would happen again this year.
Let's put it this way. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but if somehow by the grace of God they do, they sneak in, they ain't making it far. So
No.
Sorry, Dallas fans. Every single year you are getting actually, I don't feel bad because you guys, it's you too. It's not just the media. The Dallas fans hype them up too and make everyone believe that this is the year that they're going to do it all.
I'm also 100% sure that most Cowboys fans would agree with our takes that they're a lot closer to just rebuilding the team, which I'm sure some would probably prefer than trying to fake lie to themselves that, hey, we're right there, like we're here. That's not the case. Like, y'all deserve to be trolled. Y'all deserve to be drugged in the mud right now because y'all owner is really just shows that not everybody needs to be in every single position. You're not meant to work every single position on your team. You can't be the owner, the GM, and possibly the coach, which is why Mike McCarthy's in place, because I believe he's being controlled by Jerry Jones anyway. So my parting shots for y'all Cowboys fans, for NFL fans everywhere, the Dallas Cowboys stink. I think they need to blow this shit up before it becomes unsalvageable and before you start losing the locker room, which they probably already have, and figure this thing out in 2025, in 2026, or 2027. Get rid of this stuff. Your product stinks.